Okay, this is a special video. You know that Marco is super excited about the championship weekend because he broke out his calculator. And I got to tell you something. Now, was it a calculator or an abacus?
What a guy. What a guy.
All right, so you've got some numbers. You've actually got theories backed by numbers here. So I'm just going to give you the floor. What should we be looking at with this?
Well, what we're talking about, to bring the listeners up to date, last week we talked about, I made the statement that pick the winner is going to, just the straight up winner is going to correlate in a point spread winner as well, more often than not. And you go, that's, gave me your eye roll. Give me the eye roll. I like it.
No, I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you when you say something here that isn't right. Go ahead.
Situation is, and again, with the lines being what they are this week on the two championship games, I think that there's value if you like the underdog to play the money line, because teams that win the game straight up cover the spread, and it's already 8-0 this year in the playoffs. The point spread.
So when people that win the game straight up cover the spread. So you're saying if the favorite covers the spread or wins the game straight up, he's also covering the spread, which he's winning by more than the spread. And clearly, if a dog wins the game, he covers the spread. Okay.
8-0 so far in the playoffs, and remember, that's
so for every dog that won, you would have won on the money line.
You would have won on the money line, and it wasn't a case in this 8-game study that it was, all small favorites. We had 3 double-digit games in the playoffs, big lines, and dogs won outright 2 of the 3.
Okay, so we're counting the Jets as double digit?
Yeah.
All right, so over a touchdown.
Over a touchdown. History this year in the NFL, if you would have just picked the straight-up winner, you would have also had the ATS winner 83.5% this year. And this is going back the last 5 years, RJ. There hasn't been, the lowest year was 79.9% in 2009. And back in 2007, a high point, unbelievable, 98.1% covering the spread.
So I'm looking at your numbers. 208 won the game, 4 lost the game, and 17 pushed the game. Okay. So my question is, when you bet underdogs in the NFL, how do you bet them?
I'm traditional. I'm old school. I take the points. This is something that, was brought to my attention, and I read it once in his publication, and I went back and I said, you know what? I remember that. I want to dig the numbers up, and we got these numbers from our good friend Mark Lawrence, and Mark Lawrence Jr., his son, ran the numbers for me from Playbook. He's one of our handicappers here on the site. They've got one of the best databases in the NFL for these kind of stats.
Yeah, Mark Sr. is one of the trend gurus out there, no doubt about it. So my question is this: are you going to start playing all money lines on dogs?
It is something that I've got to consider for the playoffs. I think
what is this, political?
Well, no.
Are you going to vote for or against abortion? I'm going to consider both sides.
I think
why aren't you going to? I mean, sounds like you're pretty smug with these numbers.
Pretty smug with these numbers.
Why aren't you going to do it?
I think what I'm going to do is a hybrid of it, and the hybrid of it being split my wager up.
But if it's better value, why wouldn't you do it all?
Well, I'm giving you these numbers, and I'm thinking, you being the math guy, you tell me if it makes sense.
Well, that's the question. One reason off the go that I don't like this is with a side bet, you have a 20-cent line, okay? Minus 110, minus 110. It's a 20-cent line. As you move past the close games, and especially as you move towards the double-digit favorites, you have a huge spread between the lay and the take back. It can be minus 700 plus 500. So at that point, the amount of juice that you're paying actually goes up. So to me, whenever you're being charged greater vigorous or juice or hold, there's got to be a real reason to subject yourself to that. Number 2, and again, I've got to dig into the numbers because I trust to some degree the marketplace itself. I know, a lot of professional batters. No one plays straight money lines all the time. It strikes me, it's almost like, imagine if you saw a bottle of pills on the table or on a counter at a grocery store and it said, take this and you'll live 20 years longer guaranteed. Wouldn't you think you would have heard of that before? So I'm going to be suspect of that. I'm suspect that the math holds up on this. I think what this is going to end up being, and since I didn't have a chance to do the research, in a way it's kind of fun to depict on video the way you got to think these things through. I certainly think it's an eyebrow raiser, and I think it's worth digging into. Here's what I think we're going to find out. If you talk to the average square, they don't know how powerful the 11 to 10 is. They're like, I got to win about half the games, and a few more than half. But we all know is at 50% you go broke, at 55% you live in a mansion. That difference, that 5% is the difference. I think what you're going to find out here is you're absolutely right. A lot of the time the underdog's going to win the game straight up. But those few times, that 17% or 16.5% that they don't, takes the underdog with the points upwards to 50%. And though it feels like 16.5% isn't a lot, if you think about it, and I think, let me see your numbers here real quick, is you're making an interesting point, is we're saying the underdog typically wins the game outright 32.7% of the time. So now if you say, okay, on average, the underdog it looks like the average here this year, like we said, is 16%. It looks like the average is closer to 18. Now what's 18 and 32?
50.
So it feels like what's happening here is, like you said, is the underdog's winning straight up about 33% of the time, and the line matters about 17% of the time, which is getting you to 50. So I don't think blind it's going to make a ton of sense. And I think as we're thinking this through on air, I think it's showing that. But I do think there's a case can be made that's similar to the bowl games. And I really believe in money lines in the bowl games. And maybe it's applicable in the playoffs. It's a situation is once a team gets behind, you see this happen all the time, is you'll see teams fight back a lot in the regular season because the teams let up. Mm-hmm. The team that's ahead lets up a little bit, and the other team emotionally is going through the motions. They're not really depressed or down 21. They're just playing their game. Mm-hmm. What I find out, you have more blowouts in the Super Bowl than probably any other game typically. I think it's emotional. Is once you're down 17 or 21, it's like your season's crushed, just like in the playoffs. And I think that the case can be made that what's going to happen is you're going to have more blowouts, so the underdog's points don't matter as much. And when you do have an extreme results like the Jets, you're going to collect that big payday. I tend to agree with you. So I think and again, we're on air kind of thinking this through. I think what ends up happening is you have more extreme results in the playoffs than you do the regular season, which pushes you away from teasers and pushes you to taking the dogs on the money line. So I think if there's any time it's going to make mathematical sense, I think you might be right. The playoffs are it. And with the 8-0 at this point, it's a small sample, but it's speaking to that. It'd be interesting. Did they break down the playoffs historically on that?
No, all those other numbers were regular season.
So it might be worth breaking that down too. But you know what I love? I love we always talk about, and we'll close here, we always talk about how one of the beauties of having a community is we all affect each other. And I know you've taught me a massive amount through your massive experience of these handicapping approaches. And I'll tell you this right now, the fact that you're thinking about numbers, this is something 5 years ago you weren't doing a lot of, because you're being influenced by the other handicappers at the site. And to me, that means everyone's becoming more well-rounded. And this is interesting stuff. And let's thank Mark Lawrence again. Any closing thoughts?
Nope, just wish everybody luck with the football games this weekend, and I'll be attending one of them.
Oh, you're going back to the Steeler game.
Yeah.
We can tease for next football season because we're always looking ahead. You want to debate me on the 3.5-point teaser flip. So I didn't have a chance to get my math ready for that, but we actually talked about that in the pregame forums where the idea of flipping the teaser from -3.5 to +3.5, and everyone said, oh my God, that's passing through zero. I actually did some math and it isn't quite as bad. It's a very viable play, though not necessarily positive expectation. So if you haven't checked that out, go to pregameforums.com, but we'll probably debate that next football season.
I would love to.
All right, guys, enjoy the games, and we'll see you next week.